This week on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, I am so excited to actually be sitting down and chatting with Parisa. We talk about finances, and I get that that is not the conversation that many people want to dive into. But the reality is that many of us in the queer community who are thinking about creating a family know that we need to make sure that we have money aside to look after ourselves through the process, to pay for the journey, and to take care of our family once it arrives. So we talk about all of that and so much more. You don't want to miss any part of this episode. Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Welcome, everyone. Today, I am extremely excited to introduce you to Parisa. I hope I've said that correctly or close to correctly. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here because you're here for a different conversation than I typically launch into with members of the queer community. You're here to speak about your professional role. So tell everybody who you are and what you do and what makes you absolutely so fabulous to be here on the show with me.
Thank you, Sam, for a very nice introduction. I'm a queer non-binary financial planner based in Vancouver. I mainly work with individuals and business owners within our community. And yeah, that's what I'm really passionate about because I started working in financial services around, I want to say like around 8 years ago. And I soon realized that this industry is not honestly, it's very heterosexual, it's very traditional, and there's not a lot of conversation uh, about us and about how we navigate our life decisions. Because as you might know, when it comes to financial planning, it's a very different concept for queer couples, whether it's starting a family or retirement planning or estate planning. So I soon realized that representation matters, specifically in the financial services. So since then, I founded Diverse Wealth, which is a boutique financial planning and advisory firm based in Vancouver, and I've been servicing queer families and business owners since then.
I love that. Wow, succinct too. You just got that all in there. You're right, though. I mean, I don't think that it's unusual that any group of individuals looking for someone to work with, whether it's a mechanic, whether it's a family doctor, whether it's a financial planner, whatever it is, wants to find someone with whom they can relate, at least on some levels. And for those of us in the queer community, we want somebody that we don't have to continuously out ourselves to or explain our queerness to. And I mean, I did that when I found a therapist. You know, we do that when we find financial planners. You want that aspect of your life to be a non-issue and to just get into the nuts and bolts of what it is that you're seeking their support or their counsel on. So the fact that you offer this service is amazing to me. Now, you say that you're based in Vancouver. Are you exclusively only supporting people who are in the British Columbia province, or do you have license to support across the country?
That's a great question. Am I actually licensed in Ontario and Alberta as well? But our firm is providing all of the services nationwide. And you actually brought up a great point about building that trust and relationship with clients because if you look at my website, I mentioned some of the wording that I use on my in my website is queer focused financial planning. And sometimes I get asked that, what is it different? Is there any difference in the process or systems or tools that you might be using for a queer couple versus a heterosexual couple? And to be honest, at the high level, financial planning, advisory, investment planning, retirement planning, it's very similar process, but there are also some very important, different extra layers of planning that is really important for queer community. Like for example, a common conversation for a lot of my clients is that they don't have basically they're not coming from a traditional family, or because of their new identity or their sexuality or their gender, they don't have the best relationship with their biological family, but they have chosen family who are their loved ones and community members and like whoever they are in relationship with or friends, right? So one of their main concern is how do I make sure that they're going to be treated, my chosen family are going to be treated exactly as the same way as I want to be if something were to happen to me, basically, right? So how can I protect my partner? How can I protect my loved ones? And these are some of those conversations that when you go to an advisor or a firm that is not really built with these conversations in mind, you're probably not going to get asked these questions from them.
Hmm.
Or or even if you're not getting asked these questions, probably those clients don't feel comfortable and confident enough to share that part of themselves, right? And it is very crucial when you start working with a planner, you want to make sure that you are super confident and comfortable to share all different aspects. To be honest, the more details you can share, the better the outcome is going to be. So
Hmm.
whether it's about your relationships, whether it's about your asset, debt, financial situations, your goals and objectives, your trauma around money, any bad past relationships, any objectives for the future, any divorce, any new relationships, any I don't know, there's so many non-traditional relationship structures in our community, whether you're in monogamous relationship or polyamorous. So you want to feel confident to be able to share that with that person, because
Hmm.
all of those details really help to shape your holistic financial plan long term. And that's why, yes, in the three provinces that I mentioned, I'm fully licensed. But again, as part of our bigger firm, we provide this services nationwide.
And it is so important to find someone that you feel safe with. You've brought up something that I think I really want to spend just a moment chatting about, and that is trauma around money. Because many in the queer community in their lives have experienced an extensive amount of trauma, lived through just recognizing their own queer identity and not knowing how their family will respond to them or receive them, trying to figure out how to move themselves forward in the event that they haven't got biologic family, and trying to navigate how to create a chosen family for themselves. If that's rooted, their lives have been rooted in religion, what does that mean for uprooting completely their entire life philosophies to this point, only to be able to live authentically? So they've had trauma upon trauma upon trauma put upon them. And then we get to the point where they're wanting to talk to somebody about securing their financial future. And they have a lot of trauma surrounding money as well. How do you break into that with them? Is that a question that is easy enough to answer? I suppose it's probably fairly loaded, but I would just think that when you see them, they already come with all of this trauma that they're carrying, and money happens to also be another one.
Mhm. Honestly, I myself, I'm no stranger to this process, to this conversation. Um, Majority of clients bring up the same concerns that you just mentioned. Um, and hopefully at the end of the podcast, I can even share a little bit about my journey, because I'm
Yes.
someone that confidently I can say that as a queer person, I went through some of this challenges in my life, in my personal and professional life as well. But To get back to your point, I think that it always starts with a conversation, with an honest conversation. Safety, I like that word that you used. Feeling safe is very important. Once you feel safe and once you build that trustworthy relationship with your planner, with your advisor, The advisor job is to ask you a lot of questions. I always advise my clients that let's take a few sessions, one or two calls, or as much as necessary to talk about you, to talk about your goals. If you're in a relationship or you have a family, make sure we navigate those conversations. Make sure there's no secret, basically, between yourself and your advisor, between the partners, between family members. Uh, Sometimes I get, this rushed requests from some of the clients that, okay, no, I just want to do this and that quickly. Sure, it is very feasible for advisor to get things done quickly, but again, my recommendation is to, allocate some time for the process before entering into an agreement with with your planner. Make sure that you have a few sessions to, interview each other, and make sure that your planner need to understand all different aspects of your life, not just the financial side of things. And this is what we're trying to do differently. And that's where the word holistic comes from. What is a definition of a holistic financial life planning process? Basically is beyond just investing or securing a simple life insurance. It's these conversations, it's taking time to understand before putting together the plan, before going to the execution phase, which is basically, opening accounts or putting together documents or getting some signatures here and there. Before that, you want to have at least a few sessions of just conversations, making sure everything is clear, especially around trauma and, all those emotional challenges that people can have around money. It could be like you mentioned uh, from my end, I've seen that it comes from so many different reasons. Sometimes I had clients now I can think of it was because you know what, they did a gender affirming surgery, and the parents were like, no, we're not going to fund your life, or we're not going to provide any type of financial support from now on. So now you're on your own. And this person was only 21-year old. So how I'm gonna go from that, right? How I'm gonna, what are some of the steps that I need to take in order to make sure that I'm prepared financially, emotionally to navigate my life? And I think it's really important for the planner to have the capacity to provide this type of support as well. So for my end, for example, we have these conversations. We actually encourage having these conversations with clients before starting executing their plans. And I actually recently partner up with a money coach as well. So for clients who need some extended coaching and behavioral support, or like financial and behavioral support before getting into any contract or investing or navigating markets, uh, that opportunity is also available for them to, have work through those trauma, have those conversations. And once they feel confident and they feel like, okay, now I can commit to the planning process, then, we can go to the next step.
I'm thinking about how important that would be for an individual or couple who comes to you whose vision for themselves for the future is parenthood, knowing that within the queer community, it's almost impossible for us to create a family without there being a financial cost, and in some cases, an extremely high financial cost for family creation. What point do you feel best to step in? Do you think that the conversation with the money manager for behavioral things is a good place to start for that? The person that you refer, and then you sort of work with them to find ways to set their money aside so that their money can work for them?
Yeah, and again, that goes to that conversation because my process is very personalized, right? So
Right.
I have some couples that, when we talk about having a kid in future or family planning, they say absolutely not. Not like that's not even an objective for us, right? So
Right.
I'm like, okay, so then definitely there's no financial consideration or complexity or cost that we need to associate for them, right? But if family planning is one of their objectives, obviously, then there is an extra layer of planning because we want to make sure that, well, for a lot of our clients, this isn't something that is just going to happen magically, right? The
Yes.
process is very intentional, like you mentioned. It can come with a lot of complexity, with a lot of cost, with a lot of, there's no one solution or one pathway. To give you a very recent example, I just remembered, um, I was working with this queer couple again, working on their investment plan and family planning. We created a baby fund. That's just like fun names I use for different emergency fund or saving plans that was specifically and intentionally they were putting money into it and growing at a moderate rate for a couple of years in order to be ready for when the time comes, right? But in the middle of the process, even with all this planning, pre-planning, in the middle of the process, they realized that uh, due to some medical like or issues, they had to go and find egg donors as well. So that was not part of their plan. They had like sperm donor and they have enough basically cost planning and everything else for the other parts of the process, but this just happened unexpectedly. So that's like an additional cost again
Hmm.
and delayed the process. And because it delayed the process, it impacted their life and their, uh, you know, so that was, and because of that direct experience that I see with a lot of clients, we want to make sure that we are extra prepared again, because there's no one pathway, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes you start with IVF or fertility process, and for whatever reason, it might not happen. Okay, now I want to switch to adoption process. That can cost anything from, I don't know, depends of the province that people are, or depends of if they have any coverages or insurances. It can be from tens of thousands of dollars, right? So again, the financial considerations and planning for it is really important. How we usually help with them is again identifying their timeline, identifying their budget, right, their cash flow needs before going through before this process, going through this process, and after. Having that emergency funding for any emergencies that can happen
Right.
along the way, and just again being like extra protected. I know that in there might be some, for example, in BC, as you might know, the first round of IVF is publicly funded up to a certain amount, right? So understanding like what are some of the uh, financial like or benefits or grants or programs that are available through federal, provincial, or local governments or some community grants, right? These are some of the resources that we provide. I mean, if they're eligible to have access to that,
Right.
and also the other part of it is part of the financial planning, just to make sure that we are fully prepared for everything that might happen.
Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. You know you want to start a family, but you're really not sure where to start, what questions to ask, who is your best person to connect with. Well, I would say that the best person to connect with is Sam from Baby Ready. We have connections and resources, answers to questions, and we have been helping support families for over 25 years. So when you are looking to start the process of creating the family of your dreams, look no further than Baby Ready. You can learn more about the services we offer and the places you can meet us in person at www.babyready.info. When you're looking at investment pathways for people and funnels into which you would put their money to watch it grow, how much of the conversation that you have with them early on is rooted in which companies are associated with these funnels? Because there's a lot of organizations that we look at and we think, okay, well, those ones are absolutely supportive of the queer community. They have great DEI policies and initiatives. And those ones over there, they really are the ones we want to avoid. For how many? I guess my question mostly is, does that come into consideration? And do most of your clients care? Are they more interested in watching their money grow, or are they more interested in making sure that their money is growing because it's been placed in an ethical location for them?
Well, in my case, I can speak about my practice. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Well, I consider myself lucky. I'm very grateful that a lot of people who reach out, they reach out to me. They are very mindful about, sectors like we call it ESG or like renewable sectors, or yes, I want to be in the financial market. I want to see my money grow. These are really important factors for me, for my family, but also I want to make sure that I'm not supporting certain industries or certain sectors like weapon manufacturing, like oil and gas, for example, or things like that. So honestly, I would say from my investors, like I don't know, 70 or 80% of the investors, they specifically come to me because they care. And I think I really appreciate it because there are many. I don't know the exact number, but there are thousands of solutions that I personally have access to provide to them that yes, you can still be invested, you can still navigate the financial markets. The process starts with understanding their objectives, the risk level, whether it's short term, it's midterm, is it the baby fund, is it an emergency fund, is it for retirement, right? So having we identify those buckets for different goals and objectives, understanding the budget, understanding the cash flow, and then allocate them basically accordingly. But, you know, they also, want to make sure that their personal values are also, is on the line with their
Hmm.
investment and financial plan.
Hmm.
So according to one of my clients, they just want to like go to sleep, not knowing that their money's growing. Uh, with a good rate, but also they're not funding this like ongoing war, for example, in the Middle East for whatever reason.
Yeah,
So yes, absolutely. And I really appreciate this question because unfortunately, the traditional banking system, like they might not have the best options when it comes to ESG, when it comes to responsible investing. I understand that there is a lot of marketing about it, but you brought a really great point. Is it just a one-liner on the website, or is it actually, in
right.
accordance with like ESG or DI, like an all of the standards that you mentioned, that is something that I'm personally super passionate about. And I can tell you that uh, part of it could be a greenwashing type of marketing
Sure.
that some of these companies are doing to attract clients. And unfortunately, this is what's happening. But as investors, as consumers, advisors, clients, all we can do is to educate ourselves about other options that are available and choose what's best for us and our plan and you know, what is it that is more aligned with our personal values. I personally can just guarantee that yes, there are many options in the within the Canadian, uh, you know, uh, uh, Canadian investment market available for all the Canadians to explore, at least to explore and to choose the best.
That's important, right? I mean, on one hand, we're so excited about the idea of creating our families and getting things going and getting the whole process started. And at the same time, we want to make sure that our children are coming into the world being funded by money that we feel safe, that we've earned in the safest
Mhm.
fashion possible. But I also though want to talk a bit about because you do financial planning, you talk to people about their financial investments, you talk to them about their goals and their life objectives. But then we also have to take into consideration that things don't always unfold the way that we anticipate. We plan to be here when we become parents, we plan to be around to watch our children grow and thrive well into adulthood, but that doesn't always happen. Are you connected with lawyers for creating wills to make sure that our children are protected, our partners are protected? I mean, you mentioned this earlier from a financial standpoint, but how did the legalities of all of this work together in terms of wills and estate planning and that kind of thing?
Mhm. Absolutely. That's a great question, and I'm glad you brought it up. Like state planning, the term state planning has to be basically part of a holistic financial plan. Again, so a lot of the time I find myself educating my clients, also run a lot of workshops and webinars, and some of the things that I always bring up, just because you have a TFSA or RRSP with Wealthsimple, that does not mean that you have a financial plan. That's an investment account and it's a great initiative. But we have to make sure that we have proper legal documentation in place so we can protect our loved ones, we can protect our family, our kid, our partner in case something were to happen to us, right? There's
Mhm.
a lot of risk that can happen that it's outside of our control, right? Like it could be like death or like, the risk to lose your ability to earn income, or like right now there's a lot of layoffs happening in many industries because of the economic decline that we're experiencing here in North America. So, how can I protect myself against those risks? And especially for queer couples and families, these are very important factors. Like you mentioned, what is estate planning? Let's start with that. It can be by itself, like, when you talk to lawyers or those legal language, comes with a lot of jargon and heavy words. So what we do, yes, to answer your first question, yes, in my team, it's not just myself. Your financial advisor should not play the role of your accountant and your lawyer, but they have to partner up with those legal professionals to make sure that they can create the best plan for you. So we
Right.
do have those professionals in our team and are free of charge for our client service as well. And we always counsel with them for every client's case because estate planning by itself can be confusing, right? So, but the sooner we start and the sooner we understand their terminology, the better is for future on how we're going to protect our family and our legacy. For example, having an up-to-date will, that's like really, really important. All right. It will basically, it's a set of directions just to make sure that if anyone were to happen to me, uh, basically, based on that set of directions, they know that how they're going to distribute my assets, right, to my loved ones. It also helps you to name guardians, for example, for your children. Who is going to take care of them? If I pass away. And basically, you have to, you make sure that you still gain control over your assets, over how your family is going to be treated, even after your death. And I think this is a really beautiful thing. I think this is
Mhm.
true love. The two
Mhm.
things. This is how I define it, right? So having a will is really important. I understand there is some sometimes I hear from clients that lawyers charges this much and that much. It might not be affordable for some clients. Right now, there is some online will planning services that is a little bit more cost effective. However, I just want to always tell my clients to be cautious that those platforms are great if you're just one person and not, there's no complexity in terms of income or assets. Definitely, it's better than having nothing. But if you're in a blended family with kids from a previous marriage or different types of income or a corporation income or business income, and there's a little bit more complexity, definitely it's recommended to sit down with a lawyer and get it done because by doing that, not only you have a comprehensive will, but also you can get your power of attorney, healthcare directives, living trust, and everything set up properly as well.
And it's something that nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to think about that. Like I say, when we're starting to have a family or we're thinking about having a family, we want to watch our children grow up and but not to talk about it, not to put the provisions in place just in case, is a way of burying our heads in the sand. It's important to make sure that we're thinking ahead for the just in cases. Nobody plans to get cancer. No one plans to lose their job. No one plans to be in a car accident, whether they lose their life or not. So putting these thoughts together and really making the plans is the best way that we can protect our children, which is ultimately the goal in all of this, right?
Yeah, and like just one more thing to add to this conversation. Like I said in the beginning, for a lot of us, family isn't just biological, it's chosen. We talked
Right.
about that. It's your best friends, it's your buddies, right? So, and why this specific concept matters a lot in estate planning, because without those proper documentation, your chosen family, again, depends on which province you live, but since we're talking about the legal procedure, they that doesn't mean because they're your chosen family and you love them, it doesn't mean that in the eyes of the court, right, they're going to have any automatic inheritance rights, right, or any hospital basically visitation rights, or the authority or permission to make any legal or medical decisions on your behalf.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario is like you don't want basically your biological family at some point come to the court and dispute your wishes or their wishes, right?
Right.
So if everything is not properly documented beforehand and as early as possible, then all of this very unfortunate scenarios might happen in the future, right? Because
Yeah.
just because I have a chosen family doesn't mean again they're legally and automatically protected after my death.
Speaking of families and creating families and things like that, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? We've talked about your professional role, but who are you in this world in terms of are you a parent? Are you planning to be a parent? Are you connected to your bio family? Like, can you tell us a little bit about more about who you are?
Um, yeah, honestly, I'm on the same page with a lot of my clients. I'm a fair parent, and not, but I'm in the process. My partner and I, we are navigating this process as well. And I think for me, it's very intentional. I'm very intentional about how I think about family planning. Obviously, both personally and professionally. And I don't know, there's no secret ways for me, like exactly like how I advise my clients. I approach it the same way
Hmm.
as I do with my community and my clients. We plan early. My partner and I, we started planning early. We're thinking through every, that like, are we financially ready or do we need to save more or, all that steps.
Hmm.
And we're making sure this is very important. This is very important part of our conversation that we're making sure there's flexibility for different paths, right?
Right.
Because again, you never know what's going to happen along the way.
True. That's so true. So you're still in the discussion phases with nothing concrete planned as yet?
I guess yeah, in the discussion phase. No, we started the planning
All
process. We're
right.
going,
Good
yes,
stuff.
yes, and going through some medical procedures, and we have a defined timeline.
Nice.
But again, just like making sure that the timeline is flexible and we are mentally and financially ready for anything that might not work according to the plan.
Fair. And that's all you can do, right? But that's exciting, exciting times ahead. We'll have to
Absolutely.
have you come back to the show to talk about your journey when you're on the other side of the creation process. Tell us how wonderful or harried the whole process was.
Absolutely.
Can you tell listeners where they can find you? Because you've raised so many powerful points that I know that people are going to want to reach out. And I will tell listeners, if you're not in Ontario, Alberta, or British Columbia, that doesn't mean don't reach out. It means that you may not be able to support them necessarily directly yourself, but someone you will be able to direct them to someone who can provide them with good support and recommendations. Is that correct?
That's absolutely 100% correct. Like I said, we're providing all of these services nationwide. And to be honest, I have a lot of conversations with people who are living outside of these three provinces because sometimes they're looking for just a financial advisor to advise them and guide them throughout their process and having a written retirement plan and written financial plan.
Hmm.
And I had those cases that they're coming for consultation. So for that, definitely those services are provided.
Right.
in financial services, using the terminology, we call it fee for service planning, which basically means I'm not executing the plan. I'm just the advisor, the guide, and the planner.
Hmm.
So those services are available. And the best way to find me, honestly, parisafinancial.com, or my brand name is Diverse Wells, because I'm just committed to making sure that the services is as inclusive and as accessible as possible, regardless of, uh, of my clients' basically background or their income level. I encourage everyone to reach out. They can simply schedule a complimentary consultation and have a chat with me, right? Have a chat with myself and my team to see how we can help each other, and and we go from there. There is this misconception, like when I talk to a lot of people in our community, that working with a financial planner is a very costly process. And I'm here to actually break it down, and to make sure that people understand that absolutely that's not the case for any advisor. Any advisor have their own different fee models or procedures. As I can only talk about myself. For me, it's a complimentary consultation. It's very flexible options. We can navigate those options together.
Hmm.
I'm very active on LinkedIn, and so if you just search my name, I publish a lot of articles that is relevant to queer focused financial planning. And I also send out newsletters, and I do a lot of workshops in partnership with Canadian Queer Chamber of Commerce. So if you go to Canadian Queer Chamber of Commerce website, I believe a lot of my recordings on my website is also there. But again, I welcome any opportunity to uh, talk to people and to get to know each other, and we can figure out the rest from there.
Amazing. I'm so grateful that you set some time aside to chat with me today and to share with my listeners just some really important guidance and information about things that they maybe haven't yet let themselves think about, but they need to.
I appreciate the opportunity. I think, talking about finances, the more we talk about it, the better, right? Like lack of financial education, I think it's a big uh, problem in this country, and especially within our community. Again, it's very historically, it has been very inaccessible.
Hmm.
And hopefully together we can make it more accessible, and we can make it more easy to understand for everyone. And yeah, I can't wait to listen to it.
Thank you. As a queer individual with colonial lineage, I want to first acknowledge the land upon which I live and work. Being from what is now known as Burlington, Ontario, I recognize the original ancestry of these lands as they span from Lake Ontario to the Niagara Escarpment and beyond. These lands are steeped in Indigenous history that benefits my community every day. The territory is mutually covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I stand is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. The land dictates everything about our ways of being. Particularly, the land teaches us about fluidity. Concepts of the binary system and heteropatriarchy were imposed by the colonials, who were, at the same time, removing children from their homes, families, and all that was familiar to them. These same children were divided by the only two prescribed binaries recognized by the settlers, and they were forced to conform to a performative, gendered falsehood. The land doesn't operate under binary thinking. It is diverse, complex, and unpredictable at times. Rather, the land holds us and all of our remarkable paths and identities. Every organism and spirit has a purpose. It is from this understanding that I strive to live and grow. Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, If you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.